we're going to start off with this lovely vase. If we take this vase and we go to our InDesign and we'll go File, Place, and pick up our vase. Let's reduce it just a little bit. Command Shift, if you hold them together, will reduce an image proportionally. And just kind of sits on top, so we're going to have to deal with text wrap. Now, up here in the toolbar, if your window is big enough, on these screens it is, but if you work on a laptop, sometimes you can't see it. There is a text wrap tool here. What we're really going to need is to use the window text wrap. And so we'll go ahead and we'll tell it wrap around the object shape. It wraps around it, but notice it's a big square. So we want to fix that. There are some options in here where it can try and detect the edges, bounding boxes. Bounding boxes are best if you're bringing in things like PDFs that's got it, or Illustrator files and stuff. So we're going to work on this in Photoshop, and we're going to make it so that it'll wrap around it. So I've already got it open in Photoshop, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a layer mask to do it. Now I have a couple steps. The first one that I do is strictly preventative. As I said last time, I try to protect my original image should I ever have to refer to it. Now, I can do Command J, or I can right-click and say Duplicate Layer, several different ways, whichever. We want to get a copy of it. I'm then going to hide my background layer, which I do by just turning off the eyeball. Now I am going to use a mask. I'm going to build a mask. There's several different ways, but for this time I'm going to use the Quick Selection tool, which kind of looks like a brush with a selector on it. And I'm just going to select the background. So now I've got it selected, looks pretty decent, but if we zoom in on it, we can see it missed some things. I can, if I hold the Alt key down, you'll notice that I moved to a minus in the middle of the circle. If you can't see that, if you look up here, there's a minus plus, so I can subtract from the mask, and I can try to get it to select and grow outside. Oops, too much. Command Z is undo. But I'm going to do this a little bit easier. I have clearly defined edges. So I'm going to go to the Select, and I'm going to choose the Refine Edge tool. Now there's several different views available to you. On white doesn't do much good simply because, well, the image already was on white. I'm going to go to the Overlay. It allows you to see the image, and it allows you to see what's not masked. That's what it's really showing you. I'm going to turn on the Smart Radius, and I'm going to move it out and tell it, I want you to search out a few pixels. I'm going to come over here to the contrast, and I'm going to increase the contrast because I want to sharpen the edge of the mask. By default, your masks can actually have gradients to them, so they don't have to be all on or all off. They can be partial, which can provide some interesting effects. I'm going to smooth it just a little bit, and that'll help it as it goes around corners. And if we look at it, it's pretty close. There's a few spots. We've got it close enough. I'm going to go ahead and say OK. Now, this is where I always catch myself. I know the answer, but I'm going to do it anyway because invariably it happens. And I'm going to say, OK, I've got it masked. I'm going to apply the layer mask, which is right next to FX, and my vase just disappeared. Any ideas why the vase disappeared?
Did you select the wrong background?
Yeah, I got the mask backwards. So Command Z, let's restore it. Go to select, invert the mask, and reapply it. And now my vase is standing and the background is gone. If I had selected the vase instead of the background, it would have worked the first time. But I quite often will find myself selecting the background instead of the object that I want, because most of the time I've found it's easier to select the background than the object due to plainness, out of focus, whatever, that makes it easier to select. It's not always the case, but quite often. Okay, we have a couple spots that we know isn't right on this image, so we need to fix them. To do that, I'm going to make use of this layer mask. This layer mask, you can paint on it, you can edit it. I'm going to switch to the brush tool. Where it is white is where the object stays, whereas black is where it disappears. So if I want to add to the object, I'm going to paint with white. So make sure that I'm painting with white. And I can come down here and I can paint in, and I'm going to go ahead and I'll paint a big piece. And I can bring back in. So if your mask isn't perfect, it's okay, because you can come in here and correct it. Now I am going to paint it in, but I'm not going to paint it in quite that big. So I painted in with things like this mask where the edge is kind of hard to see, very hard to detect. I quite often will do what you can see there. Tell you what, let me make this a little bit easier for you. I'm going to create another layer. I'm going to put it below it. Shift F5 is fill, and I'm going to put a black in it. There you go. Is that easier? Pick any color that will show up your image best when doing it. Okay, this bottom edge here is hard to see where the actual edge is. So I painted more than it so that I can find it, and then I will paint it back out. So now I'll come back here, make sure you're selecting your mask. I'll switch to black, and I will begin to painstakingly paint it out. Now, there is a couple shortcuts that you can use to help you along, such as if you click and then hold down the Shift key, it will do a straight line between the two. So what I'm doing here is I just drew a straight line between, and you know what? I think that could come even. There we go. Okay, it's not perfect. We could spend a few more minutes here and get this. Oh, I'm so close. Okay, I'm going to call that good enough. You get the idea. If you use a, if you adjust your brush so that it's softer, you can even do partial on this mask so that you can see some of the background, and it can be made so that the edge is slightly fuzzy. Do I need to fix the top? Yeah, just a little bit. Okay, I'm not going to fix the top the rest of the way. I think you get the idea. I'm going to turn off the black layer. It was only there to help me edit it. I don't always use black. Sometimes I use any color that's not in the image, really, so that it stands out. And we're going to save this out. I'm going to save it as a Photoshop file. So all the layers will still be there, but they'll just be turned off. If I save this out as a JPEG, I will lose my transparency. If I do it as a PNG, I will lose those extra layers. So since we're working within InDesign, within the Adobe Suite, we'll just keep with the native format. Excellent question. So we're going to do a save as, vase.psd, Photoshop format. Make sure you save with the layers. Hit save, Done. Now, let's go ahead. We're going to go to InDesign. We're going to do the same thing, file place. But this time, I'm going to pick up the PSD file. Notice there's with our transparency. Let's shrink it down just a little bit. Put it in, same problem. I hit wraparound. Oh, that still didn't fix it. But I'm going to come down here and I'm going to choose alpha channel. Notice how the text collapsed around it. I will then come up here, and this is a note. Make sure you adjust the distance between your text and your graphic. I watch for this. And it's really easy to do it, to adjust it. Here, I'm doing it with one tool. It's locked, so they're all matched. If I wanted to, I could, well, should have been able to unlock it. Because it's not in this mode, different mode. And you can see this clipping mask that it's forming, which is based upon the alpha channel. I click away. There is my text flowing around my vase. There is another step that we ought to take care of, though. This is one of those other things that helps with your grade. On our paragraph here, make sure you come in here and turn off the hyphenation. The hyphenation, it hyphenates at odd points in the word. Now, I'm using fake text. This is lorem ipsum. So it's not even really, it's not English. It's just flows like real text. But invariably, you will find that where it will hyphenate your text will be bad. It just lowers how good your text looks. Turn it off. For any assignment in this class that you're laying out text, turn it off. We do have a little bit strange stuff going on here, so probably I would, if I was really caring about this, I would adjust the size of it so that it flows a little bit better with my text and that. Okay?